I now have the privilege of introducing this morning's special guest. The Honorable Tonya Parker was first elected to the 116th Civil Court in Dallas County in 2010 and re-elected in 2014. After earning her Juris Doctorate from SMU's Dedman School of Law, she began a decorated law career, including recognition by her peers as one of the top lawyers in Texas, being voted a Super Lawyers Rising Star 4 times prior to her election to office. I didn't even know there was a super lawyer category, but that sounds very impressive. I'm sorry, back on script. Judge Parker currently serves as president of the Texas Association of District Judges, is a fellow of the American Bar Foundation, and an advisory board member for the Dallas Women Lawyers Association. She has been awarded the Honorable L.A. Bedford Outstanding Jurist Award and the Honorable Sam A. Lindsay Award for Professionalism and Ethics. Judge Parker's achievements and commitment to service are inspiring. For those of us here this morning, it is meaningful that she is a product of Richardson ISD, attending then Dobie Elementary and Northwood Junior High. The one person who was there. Before graduating from Richardson High School. Her personal and professional mantra is, I love this, shrink from no sacrifice in one's service of God, family, and community. Please help me give an RISD welcome to one of our own, the Honorable Judge Tonya Parker.
Good morning. A wise person once said that the world would be a better place if preachers didn't judge and judges didn't preach. And I sincerely hope that the emotion that I feel this morning from the energy in this room doesn't cause me to violate that rule. Thank you so much for having me. I have certainly tried to avoid coming here this morning with moralizing, preachy rhetoric about what you could and should be doing in your classrooms this fall and in your schools. Instead, I have come this morning with a very full heart, a difficult question, and a little piece of what my story is in RISD. My heart is full this morning because of what I know you have been doing in the schools to educate and otherwise meet the needs of the kids entrusted to you each school year. I know that for the vast majority of you, school year after school year, semester after semester, you have done more than give just the required time, knowledge, and skill. You have consistently gone way beyond that. And you have given your care and your consideration, your emotional energy, your tears, you've given your contacts, you've given your money. And I know that for most of you, even in times when it hurt to see the circumstances that your children in this school district have lived in and lived under, you have seen them. And you have not looked away without trying to find a solution to that which you saw. I also know that the effort that you've given, that it has come outside of your regular school day, before and after school, on weeknights and weekends. You have done all of the extra work to plan lesson plans and IEPs and to tutor and coach. You have been there attending events for kids who might not have had anyone show up if you did not go. And I know this too. And this is an often unspoken truth, but it is real, that the above and beyond that I just described, that it comes often at a price to you, and it comes at a price to your family members, to your spouse and your own children in your homes, and also to your parents and your pets and your partners. It indeed comes at a price to you. All of the sacrifice that you've made has been made not because you've chosen to teach or to be a part of education as a profession or as a job, but because of something much deeper than that, the call on your lives to educate and care for these young people, to make sure that they are inspired and that they have the ability to reach their potential. But even more than that, you've done it because of a core belief that most in this room have, that every single child deserves access to a quality public education and an exceptional educational experience. And that you have committed yourself to, because you know that not only do they deserve that access, but our city and our state and our country are better when they actually have it. I once saw a video promoting a magnet school in another school district. And featured in the video was a teacher who was asked, and she had had many years as an educator before joining the staff and the faculty at the magnet school. And she was asked the question about what her experience was like teaching the talented and gifted kids at the magnet school. Her remark stayed with me. She responded with great jubilance, and she said, these amazing kids are the kids I've been waiting my entire career to teach. And I might have taken her comment too literally, but I have to be honest with you, when I heard her say that, I immediately thought to myself, I wonder what she's been doing with the kids entrusted to her while she was waiting on these amazing, talented, gifted kids with parents who know and emphasize the value of an education. What had she done in the meantime? But when I reflect on this district, I am so grateful to say that our ISD is not waiting on a certain type of child to teach and to care for. This school district has a track record of teaching and caring for whoever shows up at the door, wherever they are from. And whatever their life circumstances. And the fact that I know so well all that you have given and sacrificed in your attitudes toward teaching and caring for the kids that you teach, I wish that I could just stop my remarks right here and simply express my compounded gratitude as a citizen and as an elected official and just go right back over there and take my seat. I wish that I could just say the words that my 90-year-old grandmother whispered to me when I won my first election, when she had me bend down to her and she whispered in my ear, "You done good, you done good." I wish that I could just say those words, because our ISD, to clean up my grandmother's grammar a little bit for all the English teachers, you have done very well by the kids. You have done very well by the kids in this district. And if all that I had was the knowledge about who you are and what you have given and the sacrifices that you've made and the results that you've been able to give, if that was it, I would take my seat. But the other information that fills my heart this morning is the information that causes me to have to press on in my remarks to the difficult question that I have taken the stage in part to ask. And that is the knowledge that 6 out of every 10 students you encounter and teach this fall will be students of color who will live in apartments just like the 2-bedroom apartments I grew up in on Mayhem Road and in the areas near Spring Valley and Coit. And 6 out of 10 of the students that you encounter will, particularly at the elementary school level, will come from families that are defined as economically disadvantaged because they live at or below the poverty level. And many of your students will come from households with parents who do not have a proficiency with the English language, turning on its head the parent-child relationship as we know it, because the child, your student, will have the responsibility, the enormous responsibility of interpreting and communicating the world for his or her parent rather than the other way around. And as was the case for me and my sister, your students will come from households with parents who have no college education and in many instances no high school diploma. Complicating these matters are the host of other things that will accompany their poverty and cramped living conditions, their parents with limited formal education and limited English skills, such as issues that arise out of their parents being incarcerated or suffering with addictions. By pointing out these statistics, I do not mean to suggest that there will not be students in your classrooms who come from stable homes, whether they make their home in a 2-bedroom apartment or a 2-story house. And I don't mean at all to suggest that there will not be parents who are engaged in and capable of parenting them through their educational experience. I know that these people exist, and I know you do too. But these numbers, they tell an important part of the story for a significant percentage of students whom you encountered last year and you will see again this fall and next spring. And so even though it is difficult for me to ask, even though it is difficult for me to ask for something else in light of everything that you have done, the knowledge that these circumstances are pervasive and they persist for the kids in your school district causes me and compels me really to ask this question, RISD. Will you do more? Will you do all of the amazing things that you did last year all over again in the 2015-2016 school year? Will you do it with greater consistency and greater tenacity? Will you continue to get great results from the students in your classrooms, in your schools? Will you keep thinking outside the box to try to reach the one or two kids who cannot get the message the way the other kids are getting it? And will you differentiate between a child who needs discipline and a child who might be hungry or need health care or need one-on-one time and a little bit more encouragement? Will you commit? Will you commit today to reach 2 times as many kids this school year as you reached last year? And will you be the one, upon encountering a cynical colleague who late in the school year feels they have given everything they have to give, will you be the one to remind them that yes, they matter, but so do these kids? Will you give more? My question to you this morning is born out of a simple principle espoused almost a century ago by Nobel Prize winner George Bernard Shaw, who said that living is about serving and serving is about being thoroughly used up for a cause recognized by oneself as a mighty one. And I submit to you this morning that there is no mightier cause than positively affecting the present of the lives of these children so that you can positively affect their future, positively affecting them and impacting them by giving them the tools to reach their dreams. There is no mighty cause, and I hope that you will delight in continuing to expend yourselves. And I'm also asking you because of something that I said last year when I was invited to speak at the New Teachers Luncheon. If you were there, you'll recall the proposition that I advanced, which is that education is no longer the great equalizer for public school children. If ever it was, education is not the great equalizer. You are their educators. You are the great equalizer, and with all due respect to your respective disciplines, the ability to detect dangling participles and rote memorization of periodic tables and random historical facts and solving algebraic equations, those things in and of themselves will not change the trajectory of the life of a child in your classrooms. What will change their lives, what will change their course, are the seeds that you and only you can sow in them. Seeds that will take root in them and cause them to challenge myths and lies and stereotypes about who they are and about who you are, about who the world is and what they are capable of achieving in it. You know that there will be an inaudible noise in your classrooms. I say that it is inaudible because it will not be heard in the classroom because it will be blaring between the ears of the kids sitting in the desk in front of you. And it will be the noise that tells them that their present circumstance is their future, that there are limitations on what they can achieve and what they are capable of. And you know that it is fruitless to try to compete with that noise. Instead, you have to keep doing the things that you've been doing. You have to rededicate yourself to doing those things all over again so that you can drown out that noise, so that it does not arrest their development and their education. That is what your predecessors did for me in this school district. I did get a great education in RISD, and I certainly am not here to deny that. But I have to tell you, the thing that changed the course of my life, the thing that really saved my life, the thing that saved me is the seeds that my educators placed inside of me, seeds that took root inside of me that caused me to see the world and see myself in a different way. There are three things that happened while I was here in the district that immeasurably changed my life and caused me to be able to achieve the personal and the professional success that I have been blessed to have achieved since I graduated from this district in 1989. But each of these three things that I'm going to mention to you here briefly, they're all things that came from my educators. They didn't come off the pages of the textbooks that I was reading. I read those. And they didn't come from my results on standardized tests. I took those. They came from the extra things that my educators did, things that they did to help cancel out some of that noise that I just spoke of. They helped me to conquer fear by teaching me to prepare for a challenge instead of dodging it. They helped me by holding a mirror up to me to help me to see myself as I was, not as the caricature that I saw on MTV videos and heard described in songs coming out of the airwaves. And they taught me the important principle that while I am greater than no one, there is no one who is greater than I am. When I arrived in this district in the 1980s from Chicago, I was a child of largely uneducated parents, and one of my parents struggled with an alcohol addiction and regular periods of incarceration in the county jail at a courthouse that I have to frequently go to, and also periods of incarceration in the state penitentiary. And we lived in virtually every complex on Mayhem Road, having 3 different addresses on the same street because we changed apartments so many times because my mother wanted us to be closer to our school and have better proximity to be able to walk, and because she needed to be closer to her jobs because she did not drive and she had jobs at local daycare centers and she needed to be in close proximity to be able to walk to the jobs. And it's against this backdrop that I arrived in the schools of this district. And I'm not sharing that with you because I want to relate a sob story to you this morning. My story turned out just fine, both because of those things and in spite of them. I'm sharing it with you for this reason. Because young Tonya Parker was future Judge Tonya Parker when she sat in these classrooms in the 1980s. And kids just like her, who have bigger dreams, kids who are even greater and capable of more, they will be in your classrooms next week. And so I'm sharing it with you so you'll recognize them, and because I implore you to find them and help them find themselves. The first person to find me and sow into me was my physical education teacher at J. Frank Dobie, Richard Bonner. Coach Bonner started to notice that I was a strong runner, and he eventually approached me about going into a track meet. And he didn't just give me a paper, an application for the track club and tell me to go home. He must have sensed that my parents, limited time, limited resources, likely would not have returned that application. He made it happen. And he came to me and told me that I was enrolled in a track meet and that I would be competing at a track meet at the end of the school year at Eagle Mustang Stadium at Richardson High School. And I expressed to him my trepidation about being good enough to compete and embarrassing myself in a stadium filled with people that I did not even know. But Coach Bonner had no part of my awfulizing. He simply explained that the solution to the fear of poor performance is preparing to perform. And so that's what I did. I practiced and practiced and practiced. I ran all over Richardson. I was like the Forrest Gump in Richardson, Texas. And I will never forget the deep sense of pride that I felt the afternoon that he handed me that red jersey with a white collar and a Dobie doggy on the front of it. And I took that jersey and I went to Richardson High School, Eagle Mustang Stadium, and I ran myself right into first place and broke a school record that day. But really is significant is that the following Monday in the gymnasium, Coach Bonnert gathered everyone together in 6th grade, and in that gymnasium, he presented me with a plaque, and that plaque was the first time, it was the first time in my life that I had seen my name engraved in something that said I was a winner. And that moment was compliments of Richard Bonner. And from there, I went on to from Dobie Elementary, I went on to Northwood Junior High School. And at Northwood Junior High School, I continued to excel in track and other sports. And I have to say that I became pretty confident in my athletic abilities and eventually began to embrace the idea that I was an athlete to the exclusion of everything else. In 8th grade, I encountered Miss Fenora Brown, the late Fenora Brown. And Miss Brown apparently sensed the danger in me beginning to subscribe to the myth that the only thing that I was and the only gift that I had or area of competency was on a track or on a court. And so one day after I read aloud in class a short story that I had written as an assignment, Miss Brown asked me to stay back. And I stayed back in the classroom nervously, watching all of my friends and classmates exit the classroom, and I sat in my seat. Miss Brown insisted that I stand, and she began to come closer to me. And she got close enough to where I could feel her breath on my face as she spoke firmly these words. "Young lady, you are not just an athlete, you are a scholar," she said. And because of who she was, a teacher at Northwood Junior High School that everyone thought was the most difficult teacher there, and because she said it, in my world from that moment forward, it was so. I was not just an athlete, I was a scholar, and I went on to Richardson High School, where I continued to perform on the track, but now also in the classroom. And I took that as seriously as I took all of the things that I picked up in terms of a track and in a court. I took the classroom studies as seriously. And I started to expand, and I joined the school newspaper and took a creative writing class, and I really started to get into this idea that I was smart. But I continued to do track, and I excelled my sophomore year. I was undefeated in the hurdles, and I made the varsity track team. And when we got to my junior year, we had a track meet in Highland Park called the Highland Park Invitational. And I remember being on the bus driving down Hillcrest High School. And on the bus, I was driving with my coach, of course, sitting on the bus next to me, and I was just fascinated by the houses and the cars and everything that I was seeing. And my coach told me to just focus my mind on getting ready for my race and just put my energy into that, but I did not listen. I was taking it all in as I drove down Hillcrest, which ironically I would drive down every day for 3 years to SMU Law School years later in my life. But on that day, I was just overwhelmed by everything that I was taking in terms of the material things that they had. And I ran in the track meet that day, and I came in second place. And I still see the young lady a full hurdle ahead of me, and I still feel the feeling that I had, that there was nothing really that I could do to catch up with her and defeat her. After the race was over, which my coach chided me, and he looked at me and he said, "That was one of the worst performances you have ever given. The performances that you've had in practice and the times you ran there suggested that you could have won that race. And you defeated yourself before we ever even got here on the bus by convincing yourself that people who have more material possessions than you are better than you are in other aspects." And then he left me with these words. He said, "She didn't beat you, you beat you." And he left me there to sit and have that message to just stir inside of me. In case there is anyone here who doubts the significance of these events that I've related to you this morning, these single acts of my educators, I'm a judge, and so I brought evidence. These are two things that have stayed with me. They went with me to college, they went with me to law school, and they've been with me ever since I graduated from law school in 1998. And they sit on my bench every day on opposite sides of my gavel. On the one side sits a plaque that reads, 6th grade, Tonya Parker, 75-meter dash, record 10.32, which is really slow, RISD. RISD 1983. And on the other side of the gavel sits Highland Park Invitational, 2nd place, 1988. And these two things, they sit on my bench on opposite sides of my gavel because when you come from the place that I come from, the place where many of your students are now, the noise in your head, it can still be very loud, even as an adult. And if I'm honest with you, I would have to admit that there is a cacophony of self-doubt that often is stirring in my head and ringing there when the finest lawyers from the finest law schools at the best law firms in this country appear in my courtroom so that I can resolve the dispute between them based on my knowledge and understanding of the law and the facts and issues involved in their case. And in those moments, these two things that sit on opposite sides of the gavel, they act as noise-canceling headphones, and they cancel out that noise, those lies, those things that are going on in my head, those images that make me think that I cannot rise to the occasion. And then I do. I rise to the occasion of my oath and my occupation and resolve the dispute between the folks who have the matter before the court. It was true in the 1980s, and it is true today. When you give more to your students, you are the great equalizers for them in a way that nothing else can be. You and only you can tool them to face fears of inadequacy, to see their own potential. You can give them words that they will carry with them and principles that they will store inside that will help them with the many adversities that they will face in their personal development, in their educational pursuits, and in their professional advancement. You will do that. You will do that. Before I take my seat, it is important to me to say a word to those of you who are here who are not teachers or administrators or counselors, but perhaps are part of the custodial, maintenance, or cafeteria staff. When I was in school, the janitors and cafeteria employees resembled my parents more than my teachers did. I suspect that to some degree that is still true today. They were working class people without a college education and many without a high school diploma. And I have to say to you that I watched them. I watched them in the hallways do their work. I watched them be diligent and hardworking and dedicated. And I watched the dignity with which they approached their work. And I would look at them because they so reminded me of my parents. I would look at them and in some way they would reassure me that my parents, who were somewhere in the city doing similar work, were dignified, hardworking, decent people too. And that was an important message for a young child to internalize, and it was a message that I did not often get. And the clean environment that the janitors maintained for me in my school was often one of the cleanest environments that I got to be in. Like many of the kids in your schools now, I would walk past dirty stairwells and parking lots that had trash receptacles at opposite ends that often were filled to the brim on my walk to school. And when I would come to school and be in that environment that the janitors and the maintenance staff had prepared for me, it was something about it that gave me a great sense of the importance of not just cleanliness, but orderliness. And my sister, who is here somewhere in this building with me today, will tell you. My sister will tell you that when I got my first job as a young teenager, the very first thing that I did with my paycheck is I purchased a push broom. And I would use that broom and I would sweep up outside of our apartment. I would sweep in the parking lot. My mother would have to come out and say, "You don't work for the apartment complex." But indeed, the custodial staff in my schools while I was in RSD, they had an impact on me. And the cafeteria workers, they fed me and prepared often the most nutritious meal that I would eat. My sister would tell you that we regularly, when my mother took on a second job, would walk to the 7-Eleven that is still on the south end of Mayhem Road. We would walk there and get those nachos that I'm not quite sure what's coming out of the chili thing, but we would get those nachos and we would eat that often for dinner on a very regular basis. And so the food that was prepared for me during my school day was often the most nutritious meal that I got. But even more than that, the gentle correction that the cafeteria workers gave us when we were in the lunch line acting up, behaving in a manner that demonstrated that we lacked self-respect or didn't know how to insist and demand that from our peers, that gentle correction was important. It caused me to learn the importance of deportment and courtesy and self-respect. And so I want to make sure that the custodians and maintenance workers and other members of the staff who are here know that your role in a child's school day is just as important as anyone else's. Let me close by saying that one time when I was a child, I was out on the stairs of our apartment complex and I was telling my friends in probably some ridiculous, boastful manner about how I was going to be great one day, not at anything in particular, just that I was going to be great. And my mother heard me, and when I came inside, she asked me, she said, what were you outside talking about? Being great. What are you going to be great at? And I said, well, I'm just going to be great. And she pushed back, and she said to me, do not want to be great for the purpose of being great, but for the purpose of doing the things that great people do. And it's in that spirit that I urge you, each and every one of you, to go forward this school year mindful that you matter in large part because of the impact that you can have on these kids that you're about to go forward and serve. You matter because you can be the great equalizer who helps them to access an elusive future. You matter because of your willingness in quiet moments when no one is around and perhaps no one knows to expend yourselves for a cause recognized as a mighty one, positively impacting and educating the children of the Richardson Independent School District. That is what your predecessors did for me, and that is what I hope and what I know you will go forward and do in the 2015-2016 school year. I am so proud to be one of your elected officials and to serve the citizens of this county as one of your civil district judges. And I am proud to serve my colleagues as the president of the Judges Association for this state. But before I had a bachelor's degree, a Juris Doctorate, was a partner at a law firm, was an elected judge, or served my colleagues in the capacity as president of the organization, I was a Dobie Doggie, a Northwood Junior High School Cougar, and a Richardson Eagle. Thank you so much for having me this morning. Thank you very much. Have a great school year.